Long before the first humans stood upright and took their place in the world, there was a beautiful land that was ruled by what many would come to call the Fae. These ancient beings were worshipped by mankind, but they were also feared. Humans were right to be afraid, for there were many different creatures that lived in the darkness, watching us, waiting. Most were harmless enough, amusing themselves by causing mischief and playing pranks on humans that crossed their paths. However, some had more sinister intentions. The Earthling, for example, have developed a liking for the taste of human children. These monsters are small, unnaturally fast, and impossible to kill. It was an unlucky tragedy for my people that we decided to build our village here, right in the middle of the Earthling's territory. We have lost so many of our children over this past year. There aren't enough tears in this world to weep for their loss. Thankfully, though, my grandmother taught me well in the ways of my druid ancestors. I may not be able to kill the little beasts, but I was able to work out a spell that binds them to this book. I can only hide it and pray that it never falls into the hands of a child. If you are reading this, know that I'm truly sorry for the demons that have now been passed on to you. Opening the book will have awakened them, and I'm sure they will be ravenously hungry. Once the book is opened, you must read it out loud from beginning to end, in order to return them to their magical prison. Be watchful. They only attack if you don't see them coming. Most important. Most importantly, once you finish this book, keep it hidden so that no one ever opens it again.
WIGS-FM 98.7 Game Talk.
Hello, darkness. My name is Nick Gloom. It's just me tonight. As you guys know, we answer game questions and talk tips and tricks. Well, Nate usually does. I don't really play most of those games. Anyway, let's get to the phones. First caller, you're on the air.
Hi, Nick. I'm wondering, how do I beat the final boss in Terminator Destruction?
How would I know that?
Oh, I don't know.
I'm stuck here working for crap money. I still can't afford to buy new Atari games. Would you like me to page Nate?
I don't know.
Here's the thing. Like I said, I'm working here. I don't usually come on the radio. So, I don't have as much of a bedside manner as Nate does. But it's totally fine. I bought a new OBasic book, which is the programming language for Atari, since I can't afford to buy my own Atari games, and I'm working on my own homebrew game. The pending title is Evil Midnight, where I'm not sure what you're going to have to do yet, but I think it's going to be a horror game, and it's going to be at nighttime, and it's going to be evil. Basically, you would do something all night, and then you would win. It's kind of like working here. I try to keep my head down all night, but Janet asks me to go on the air, and I'm always getting asked to do stuff. The more stuff I get asked to do, the more I get anxious and panic. It's a vicious cycle.
Is this some kind of life lesson? I just want to play Terminator.
Here's the thing.
Little Maggie O'Brien was the first. The children had been The children had been playing in Hogan's Forest when they all heard a noise. Sensing no danger because there were so many of them, 12 children in all decided to investigate the source of the strange sound. As they all searched high and low, they soon realized that Maggie was missing. Frantically, they began searching for their friend. She was a small girl who loved to play hide and seek. Her big brother Colin insisted that she was probably hiding somewhere, safe and giggling to herself as she watched everyone search for her. The sun sank low in the sky and the forest grew dark. The children, frustrated and panicked, ran back to the village to alert their parents that little Maggie was nowhere to be found. That's when everyone lit torches and spread out through the woods, calling her name. The little girl's mother sobbed desperately as we all inspected every corner of those woods in hopes of finding her. Her brother kept searching, tears streaming down his cheeks.
"I'm her big brother,"
he said, rubbing his eyes.
I'm supposed to make sure nothing happens to her.
It's not your fault, Colin, I assured him. We'll find her soon, and she'll be no worse for the wear. He nodded, forced a smile, and we all continued looking. The moment I heard him scream, I knew he had found her. Or rather, what was left of her, which wasn't much. We were sure it was Maggie because she had worn her favorite hair bow that day. Her father plucked the pink ribbon from the body and fell to his knees, wailing into the darkness. Poor Colin tried to tell us then. He said that she had been covered in what he described as little green men.
They were fat and green?
He stammered.
With bright glowing eyes. They were biting off bits of skin and flesh.
No one believed the lad. We all attributed the horrible ordeal to a hungry wild animal. Of course, what else could it possibly be? Scooping up what remained of little Maggie, the townsfolk set to work preparing for her funeral. We had no idea the horrors that lay ahead. I thought to myself how strange her wounds looked. I couldn't help but think back to what Colin had said about the little green men. It made me think of the stories my It made me think of the stories my grandmother used to tell me. She said that our druid ancestors spoke of tiny creatures that lived long ago in the swamps and marshes surrounding our lands. The Earthlings, she called them. There were 3 tribes, each being their own breed of evil. One tribe, I recall, she said, were green and fat. They would lure children away from safety and feast on their flesh. We didn't live near any swamps. Surely the boy's mind was playing tricks on him. Besides, the Earthlings weren't real. They couldn't be. Maggie O'Brien's funeral was just what anyone would expect. Everyone did their best to comfort the grieving parents. Colin kept to himself. Everyone assumed it was because he blamed himself. After his sister had been laid to rest, I came to him to ask him how he was doing. He looked up at me, eyes red from either crying, lack of sleep, or a combination of the two, and said, He looked up at me, eyes red from either... He looked up at me, eyes red from either crying, lack of sleep, or a combination of the two, and said,
I really saw them. The little green monsters.
My heart ached as I put my arms around the boy. I kept telling myself that seeing his little sister in pieces couldn't have been easy for him. He was just in shock. The stories of the Earthlings were only told to scare children into doing what they were told. That was all. The first thing my grandmother told me about the Earthlings was that there were 3 tribes. The green ones had round bellies and piercing blue eyes. She said they could be heard if you... She said they could be heard if you walked deep in the swamp at night. They would laugh and sing as they danced around their tiny campfires, which would appear only as tiny flickering lights through the trees. They were the least lethal of the 3 tribes, but every bit as evil. The red ones were more temperamental and even faster than their green cousins. They didn't sing or dance around campfires, and their celebrations were a bit more gruesome. They prefer to eat children from the inside out. It was even thought by some that they were only red because they were stained by the blood of their victims. Fire. Fiery red. Bristle-like hairs sprouted from the tops of their heads, and their glowing yellow eyes seemed cold and calculating. The pale Urklings were in another class altogether. They had white skin and wild, untamed blue hair that flowed out in every direction. The most unsettling thing about them was that they had no eyes at all, yet they somehow were the most keen and efficient killers of the three. Grandmother said that their long, wiry hair could somehow sense the presence and locations of children. There were some things that all three tribes had in common. Urklings preferred to eat after midnight and would only attack if the child didn't make direct eye contact with them. I reassured myself that the O'Brien girl